Hey everybody, check out this next interview with Gold Star mother Annette T. Hill. Hear her story and what she's doing for the Heroes community now. Check it out.
So, Annette Hill.
Yes, sir.
We're at VetXpo 2018. You were one of the speakers.
Yes.
Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what you talked about? What brings you here?
My talk was called PTS and the Brain, and I was invited to be here. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Arizona with private practice, also in Texas. I authored and was the clinical director for our treatment center for veterans and first responders, exclusively called Warrior's Heart, and with the idea of getting to the underlying causes of addiction. And nobody wants to talk about, especially in the first responder and veteran community, nobody wants to talk about that. It's seen as weak and some sort of break in a psyche, to stigmatize.
So do you see that people just kind of push that aside then? Is that what seems to be
you have to. In the military and first responder professions, you have to push those things aside. I don't want you to feel, nobody wants you to feel when you're on the, in the middle of your work day, in a combat zone and coming up on a car accident or any of those kinds of things. But that's not human to not feel. So the purpose of my position here was to explain the biology of the brain and why the parts of your brain need to work in concert. In the first responder and veteran community, you learn to override natural impulses of feeling, meaning to fight or flee things that are fearful. Instead, you override that natural part of your brain and you go in when everyone else runs away. But at some point, you have to reconcile and deal with that. And so when you don't, bad things start to happen. And the key is finding, not every bad event is going to result in a post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, almost everyone will have a bit of post-traumatic stress, meaning right after an event, you start to, kind of replay it in your mind.
And that varies between people, how long that lasts?
Well, one of the key features is looking for the meaning that you made personally about that specific event and your role in it. And usually it is due to maladaptive thinking, problematic thinking, and it comes right down to a core belief. You and another guy could have been part of the same battle, the same moment. And one of you, maybe each of you could have post-traumatic stress disorder. And I use the D, it represents the word disorder, but I say duration because the symptoms are not going away. And I'll explain the symptoms in a second. But when you're looking at the type of post-traumatic stress, what you're looking for is why is that not digesting? Why are you not assimilating? Why are you not moving through? Why is it stuck? And usually it'll come down to a core belief, such as, I should have known. Why didn't I? Should have been me. No matter what I do, I feel betrayed. I can't trust. Somewhere in there is going to be a problem. Again, not every traumatic moment results in people as car accidents or physical assault or things like that, unless the thinking becomes maladaptive. And when you're dealing with post-traumatic stress, in addition to all the physiology that goes with it and the difficult hijacking type emotions, it's the trifecta, and it really is rooted in the thinking.
So, I want to back up a little bit because you said your practice is in Arizona and Texas.
Right, and I'm working on licensure in Michigan, actually.
Okay,
right?
that's
a lot.
Very different.
I know, huh?
So, I got to ask, where in Arizona?
I'm in, my practice is right at the border of Phoenix and Scottsdale. So,
so now I really got to ask because we have an office in Scottsdale. That's where we're based out of. So right at the air park.
Oh, Scottsdale Air Park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah, I was raised in Scottsdale, listening to those little Cessnas come and go.
Yeah, so amazing. Yeah, well, it seems to be a lot bigger Cessnas with a bigger engine now.
Right, yeah, the private jets.
Yeah. So that's good. Now we're here. Are you in the Dallas area here?
I don't have I worked at Warrior's Heart.
Okay, gotcha.
So, yeah.
Okay. So in doing this with the guys that you work with, how do you work with them to overcome? I'm trying to find a way to word it, because it's like, do you overcome it? Is it curable?
Well, in my talk, I disclosed that I had post-traumatic stress disorder. I was in my mid-30s. I was drugged and raped by somebody in my church. And I was in a different line of work. I was a contractor, commercial residential, and I had no idea never even heard the term post-traumatic stress. And I had this sensation pretty immediately that my body didn't even belong to me. Very hypervigilant, attempting to numb through alcohol, constant nightmares, nightly nightmares, huge startle response. I would be going through my day, and you hear this from people with post-traumatic stress, veterans especially, that you're suddenly going about your day and it's like a video is playing right across the front of your eyeballs. You are not there. Had a guy come up to me, or we were actually sitting in the lunchroom, and he was talking about some deal that had gone south in the contracting field. And he was joking around, and he said, yeah, and they were kind of screwing me on the deal, and as a means of trying to drive his point home, he said, and they kind of like bent me over, and he actually tried to, he put his hand on me and tried to like bend me over in front of everyone, just kind of, he was joking around. Without understanding or even knowing that I had done this, I had wheeled around and I had punched him in the center of his chest, and he was on the ground. But I almost did it like in a blackout. It happened just like that. And that's a post-traumatic stress reaction. And I thought, I don't know who I am. It was very strange. So I went to counseling. We did a lot of talk therapy, which is difficult. You and I can talk about a traumatic incident, and what it's going to do is stir up all of those feelings. But that's not fixing the problem. It would be like if you had a splinter stuck in your arm and I just kept touching it, but I never pulled it out. So there are modalities out there that are aimed at pulling out that splinter. And EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, is the gold standard trauma treatment. The woman that I was seeking counseling from, eventually, when I told her I didn't want to come back after months of talk therapy, she said, well, I just learned this. Let's try this. And I thought, wave a rubber chicken over my head. I'm like, I'm so done. This is shameful to say, but I one time before going in to see her, I took a slug of alcohol in the parking lot. Okay. I was like, I cannot go in this. I didn't want to talk about it anymore. Isn't it awful? I'm embarrassed to say it, but I was like, I can't do this. And so what was interesting is that now she didn't, I don't believe she was certified. She was just new into that modality, that treatment. But my nightmares actually stopped that night. I thought, what is this voodoo magic? That's how I felt. And so the theory, the EMDR was created by Francine Shapiro like 40 years ago. And you can look her up, and it's a fascinating story. It's the most studied trauma treatment. But the upshot is that, at night when you are sleeping, your brain is updating its hard drive, basically, right? So your brain pulls from the data bank of all kinds of memories. You will dream of your brother, but he looks like, say, a movie star, and you're thinking, I dreamt of, Tom Cruise last night. No, but in my dream, I thought it was my brother. Well, because something that Tom Cruise did in a movie reminded you of something that maybe your brother did, right? And your brain will pull together this weird story. It's all about emotions. And in the storyline of the dream, you generally will have mastery. And so what's happening is that it's parallel to what you're dealing with in your current life, your contemporary life. And when you wake up, you actually don't feel so emotionally charged by the nonsense that you've been upset about. Right. Well, when you have post-traumatic stress and possibly post-traumatic stress disorder, your brain will create these nightmares, these storylines, but it never completes. And your brain will kick you into a state of awake. Right? You pop out of the nightmare. I know you know. Because it doesn't have a good point of reference. So for me, with the sexual assault, Usually when you have dreams of falling off a building or being stabbed, usually you wake just before. Well, in my nightmares, I was actually completing that. I was being stabbed, and I would see the blood flow. I would hit the ground, and in my dream have the perception I died. And because I was unconscious during the assault, it was like the worst thing had happened to me. The worst thing did happen to me. And so that was the theme of my nightmaring. And so once the EMDR, once we worked on that, using that modality, which I'm jumping around and I can hear myself doing it, so I apologize. So during your dream sleep is called rapid eye movement sleep, REM sleep.
Yeah.
So the physiology, other than possibly twitching or talking in your sleep occasionally, is your eyes move back and forth. And what has, through all of the research and studying, it's not really necessarily about the eyes, but it's bilateral stimulation that both hemispheres of your brain are highly activated in REM sleep. If you watch people when they're telling you a story about something, thinking about it, a historic thing, they will actually stare into middle space and their eyes will move back and forth. We all do it all the time. So in her theory, she just reverse engineered that. So while you're awake and fully, not in a hypnotic state or anything like that, we will target a disturbing moment. We will collect the core belief, the negative core belief, the body sensation, the emotion, and the memories, the smells, the everything, and then start the bilateral movement with eyes or tapping on the knees. If I tap on your left knee, the right side of your brain will light up, right? Because it's right. And or using sounds, little headphones where it's a sound in your left ear, a little beep in your right ear, go back, forth, back, forth. So the idea is that you're only just forcing the brain to go into the physiology of what it does when it's processing. The brain stores data in an associative network. So when you had, say, that car accident, it may have been that you were drinking a cup of coffee at that time, and you don't really realize, but when you drink coffee, you actually become more highly agitated. Or maybe you were singing a song, and you don't hear that song again for weeks and weeks and weeks or months, but you're at the grocery store and suddenly you become highly agitated. Well, the song may be playing on the Muzak, And what's interesting and exquisite about the brain is it will timestamp and hold every sensation that was part of that nearly deadly moment.
And immediately comes in.
And every time it gets triggered, you go right back to it because the brain is trying to protect you. So PTS, part of my talk was to say, could you reorganize how you look at this hijacking of your emotional state and your body? It's your brain's early warning system. It's trying to say that I'm trying to help you. I'm actually trying to keep you safe. It doesn't feel like that, but it's trying to give you an early warning system. You just don't feel like you belong to you anymore.
When something like that, you use the music as an example.
Right.
Could be months. Do you realize that it's happening? Like, I'm not sure why, or do you get
some people do and some people don't.
So the trick is recognizing
what the
it
trigger is. Well, and you don't even have to, you may not even remember. The incident may have been so traumatic that for some people who have been, say, involved in an IED, in combat, they actually don't have any memory from maybe an hour, 2 hours, or a day before the actual event. So they won't have a recognition.
Right.
But what you want to know is, so if you came into my office, we would talk about what's triggering you now. What are the things? Well, every time I'm around this person or this place or this time of year or this thing, and like a detective, we'll fish around and we'll find enough data, and then we will target. In EMDR, you want to go back to the earliest themed event around that core belief. You actually want to clean the house by going backwards, even beyond.
So it could be something like most think, well, maybe it came for like veterans. Maybe it was something, and it could be something all the way back.
All the way back.
Wow.
That's correct. So for me, with the rape, my core belief is that I should have known. It's my fault. So anything along the thematic theme of it's my fault or I should have known is up for fair game. And what's interesting is when you do the bilateral movement, your brain will bounce around all over in memories along that theme. So what I always say is, I want to clean the house. I don't want to clean a room, not just the event. I want to clean the whole damn house. So EMDR, can be as short as 4 sessions, meaning once you start the processing, maybe as long as 10 or 12, depending on the complexity.
Right, it varies.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, for the listeners that are listening right now, how can they reach out to you?
To me, they can email me at my first and last name, Annette Hill, ANNETTELPC, which stands for Licensed Professional Counselor, at gmail.com. If they're interested in EMDR in their area, and you want to get a certified EMDR therapist, you can go to EMDRIA, it's the International Association.org, and then do the Find a Therapist, and then use a zip code search, do the 50 miles zip code, and then there are filters for insurance, for military, for sexual assault, for addiction, but when it says certified, click yes.
Okay.
And then I would highly suggest, even if EMDR is not going to be the thing for you, at least that person has that kind of training. And the other reason that I'm here to answer your question, and I did share this in my talk, is that I'm a Gold Star mom. So what that means is that your loved one who was in the military died in war or because of war. And my son died as a result of his symptoms of PTSD. So even though I had already been through all of this, and he was well aware of that, even though I was doing this for a living, and we were talking about the fact that, after his 2 tours, and you could see the PTSD just ripping off of him, and his name is also Adam, which is why, as I said to you yesterday, you have the best name on the whole planet. Okay, and he was like, Mom, just let me do this myself. I got this, and this is how you guys are wired, which, love you, hate you. This is how you're wired. I want to do this myself. Let me just go back to school. Let me do this. And I kept, kind of watching, and then he would use alcohol to numb it, right? Because what that does, actually, ironically, is calms your body down, but it doesn't fix it. I love, people with marijuana and all of these other drugs. It just calms your body, doesn't fix it. So what happens, and this happens to a lot of people, and you may relate to this, is a cluster of events start to happen. So for him, roughly 4.5 weeks, there was a major auto accident. Someone ran a red light, totaled his car. And that, you could see it was like the pin in the grenade. It came out, and he was more activated. He was already dealing with the symptoms. Then he got a promotion at work, and then he was in finals week. He wanted to be a cop. He was at university. But the woman that he was living with, he was starting to suspicion she was having an affair. And as you roll forward toward those last moments,
it seems like everything just keeps coming.
And when you start to see the momentum build and the clustering of events, so for you, for instance, when you start to see the world coming at you, that's when you need to slow it down. That's when you need to pull out, and you need to start reaching out to someone instead of being the army of one. Instead of staying. Okay. So in the moments before, it was a disclosure that she had been having an affair the whole time, and she claims she made the last moments worse. So what we think is she was yelling at him, do it. His gun was at my house. She also had a weapon that was not supposed to be in that room, and he knew it was there. And in a flash of a moment, on a day he was not intending to die, he had alcohol in his system, and that combination of being so highly ratcheted up, bam, we're done. And so we survived 2 tours in Iraq, and we can't fucking survive this moment. It makes me insane. And so when you ask me why do I do this, well, I teach about trauma work and all this, and I've been doing this, and I was asked by this treatment center, the Lannons and who wanted to start a treatment center. I used to work for them in Arizona, and they wanted to start this treatment center. So I commuted 96 flights in 17 months to open that damn treatment center, because first responders and veterans deserve to come out of the shadow of feeling stigmatized, that somehow there's something wrong with you. let me say it this way, the fact that you have post-traumatic stress, and you know, we all can have it, means that you are human. It means you're not a sociopath, right? It's actually kind of a good sign, but you have to turn around and deal with it. And what will happen is kind of like a bone where it breaks, and when it heals, it's stronger. The parts of your brain that break, if you allow that work, you will have what's called post-traumatic growth. And that's what I had. You know, after I finished my trauma work, 4 or 6 weeks later, I remember thinking, what would I do with my life if I wasn't so afraid? And I had been such an anxiety-driven person. And I thought, hell, I'd go into this line of work. You know, I was a lay counselor at my church, and I love the gears of the mind. I would love to do this more. So in one day, I did a budget. I did some research on what it would be to go back to school and start all over again, and I started a catering business so that I was a single parent, so that I could take my son to school, so that I could provide money, and I could go to school at night and pick him up from school. And it took me 10 years door to door from that dream, right? A new bachelor's, a new master's, a residency work to get a private practice. And it was all because I did that trauma work. All because I cleaned the house, not the room. And it can happen, but you have to be willing. It's not, okay, look, and I said this yesterday, your life sucks anyway. You're already in pain, but you're in pain with no end, right?
Yeah.
There's no end. Well, now be in pain with a reason. It's like going in for surgery, right? And you're not going to want me to dig that splinter out of your arm, especially if it's all pussy, right? But if we don't pull it out, it'll just get more infected.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
telling your story and taking
Thank you
time
for
to sit down
asking.
with us. And if you ever need anything, you always have an open mic with us here
Thank
at the
you.
Media Group. And thank you again for being
I
here.
want to see you in my office.
You-
Got it?
I got
Best
it.
name in the universe,
Yes.
Mr. Adam.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks for watching our videos. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out our website at www.heroesmediagroup.com.